Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome everybody. I'm really looking forward to this discussion because I think it really is about Adelaide and South Australia being on the cusp. And many would argue, probably a bit over the cusp, but I just feel there's this amazing energy and momentum that we're starting to get now. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation and I hope you enjoy it as well. To start, let's whip around the table, as it were, and I'll ask each of our guests just to give us a brief description of their role in their organisation. So, Jim.
Jim Wally, I'm the newly appointed Chief Entrepreneur and Chair of the Entrepreneurship Advisory Board, of which my colleague Mohan Koo is a member. We've got an office that is part of the Department of Industries and Skills, and we have Mr. David Sony here, I believe, at the moment, and we are going to do great things for entrepreneurship in South Australia. Richard?
Richard Price, I head up Defence SA in the South Australia Space Industry Centre, and our focus really is growing that sector within the state, ranging everything from the shipbuilding to cyber security and into the emerging space industry that we have here.
And Mo?
So my name's Mohan Koo. I'm the founder, one of the founders of a company called DTEX, which was founded here in Adelaide in 2000. We're now a Silicon Valley headquartered company, and I returned back home with my family last year after a very long time away to help build out entrepreneurship with Jim and the Premier of South Australia and a bunch of very talented people from Adelaide. I'm very excited to be home.
Mo, I've got to ask you, tell us a bit more about DTEX, what the company does, and this is not in any way to put down Adelaide. You're headquartered in Silicon Valley, you're travelling around the world, and you come back to Adelaide, which I think is a great story. Tell me about that.
Sure. So we're a cybersecurity company. When we first started, no one knew what cybersecurity really was. It was an information security company, but now it's very much cyber. And what we do is we track and trace what people do with data, with all of our data inside big corporations and government departments. So, making sure that people that handle our data, whether that be banking and financial data or any other type of personal data or intellectual property, that they're doing the right things with it. Because it's often the case that whenever there's a breach, whenever there's data that gets leaked out or stolen, it's as a result of someone making a silly mistake, or somebody in rare situations, but it's happening more and more frequently, where outsiders that are finding it too hard or too difficult or too expensive to hack into networks, they're actually just paying someone on the inside to get it out for them.
Wow.
And so what we do is we use behaviour analytics to be able to do this at scale. So, some of our largest companies have hundreds of thousands of employees right across the world. And so having lots of eyes on glass watching what's happening is an impossible task.
Yeah.
So we need to rely on analytics to be able to look at behaviours and pinpoint bad behaviours and pinpoint unusual behaviours.
I've got to say, and this is completely off topic, I thought it was fascinating that you guys can tell when somebody's about to leave the company.
Yes.
Because of the way they engage with their email traffic and if they're doing files. Should you have seen me 12 months ago, that would have been most helpful.
It's never too late, Lee. It's never too late.
But yeah, so the decision to come back to Adelaide?
Well, that's an interesting one, right? So I never wanted to leave Adelaide. I love everything about Adelaide, and I was very disappointed to have to leave and go to Malaysia first, then London, and then the US.
And I've got to jump in there. Why did you have to leave?
I had to leave because back in 2000, and I still think it's a bit of a cultural issue we face today, and one of the challenges that Jim and I and the Entrepreneurship Advisory Board are really trying to turn around here is, there's a little bit of a tall poppy syndrome. Everyone hears it, everyone recognises it, but people are a little bit scared to put their hand up and say, hey, I'm really good at this, because they're scared of what might happen if they get shot down or they fail, right? And in the Valley, in Silicon Valley, it's the complete opposite. We actually have some really distinguished guests here from Silicon Valley today, some of the world's best technology leaders sitting on your table. So I do insist that you talk to them and find out, what they're thinking about what we're doing down here in Adelaide, because they're very interested in the talent that we have down here and our ability to drive things forward at a bleeding edge. So
you talk about the ability to drive things forward, which brings me back to you, Jim. The Office of the Chief Entrepreneur, it's a wonderful title. What on earth does it mean?
You're right, Lee, it's very grandiose. It makes me feel very important.
You can't even spell the word, Jim.
You're not going to ask me that. No, the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur, we literally are charged very, very simply with increasing entrepreneurship in the state. And we're doing that through various means, but a couple of key areas is development of a strategic plan that revolves around a concept of inspire, equip, enable and celebrate entrepreneurship. So we talked, Mo talked before about the issue of tall poppies. I really do want to make entrepreneurs heroes and celebrate their successes. And you know what, when they don't do so well, they would come along and say, hey, good job for trying. How can we help you next time and give another go at it?
I was going to say, is that one of the quintessential issues we have, I think, as Australians, that we don't celebrate failure? And you actually need to, because you don't learn if you don't fail.
Yeah, look, I come from a military flying and flight test background, and flight test is all about experimentation. Now, you can either call it experimentation or failure, but starting businesses is about experimentation. And when I started my own business, it very much was using that same philosophy that I learned in the military and through aviation. And it's just, you can't go anywhere if you don't try different things and experiment. It's a difficult one, the celebration of failure. What I want to celebrate is people having a go.
Having a go. Yeah.
And then when it doesn't work, then we move on. So I don't want to encourage people to fail. I want them encouraged to make sensible decisions, but understand that it's a natural part of the process for things not to go right.
So within your office, it sounds like a very wide remit. How do you pick those that look like they have some element of success, as distinct from those who just have a harebrained idea?
Right, so I think this is one of the important delineations, Lee, that the office is not there to pick winners, essentially. We literally are about creating an environment that encourages it. And then it'll be the private equity, the VC, the angel investors, it'll be the marketplace that determines who does really, really well. But what we want to do is make sure that those people that are having a go, and this is part of the part of the whole equation, they've got the skills, they know how to do a pitch, they know how to start up a business, they know how to do their product development, they know how to get it to market, they've got the skills, besides just a great idea. They've got the skills to actually take that idea and commercialise it and make some money out of it. So it's a very, very different philosophy. And I think in the past, governments have sometimes tried to pick winners. I think that can be challenging. We've got great investors and great VC who do this professionally. They do it all their life and they are good at it. And we want to get those people in South Australia helping us get better at it and investing some of their money to give entrepreneurs in South Australia an opportunity.
Richard, from your perspective with Defence SA, huge industry for South Australia and great room to grow. What's the interplay between you and other government agencies and this new interest, I suppose, drive in entrepreneurship?
So, really we're looking after the sector, and what we're trying to do, Jim's exactly right, our whole role is to create that environment where businesses can thrive. And so we work across various agencies, and the space example's a really good one where we involve various government departments, and we had key people from those departments, part of a very small team, who really set about creating that environment where we could support the space industry. Now, Jim's role now is almost to take that idea and broaden it much more. It's worked in this very focused effort in defence and space. And now we need to broaden it to other areas of economy, and that's where the office, Jim's office, and ours work together. And in fact, Jim's COO is part of my space centre.
So, is the low-hanging fruit in defence and space because we've already got traction in those areas? And what does it look like? Where's the room for growth, Jim?
Look, there's entrepreneurship, and one of the great things about this job is that the more I've travelled around, the more connected I've been, and I've always been reasonably connected in the Adelaide business community. But there are so many great stories out there, so many startups doing all sorts of amazing things in a whole range of areas. But certainly, and biotech is a great example. You go down the west end of North Terrace and just look at the facilities there and what is going on there. Some great stories. But certainly, we've got nearly $100 billion worth of defence projects that we've signed up in the last couple of years. We've got a real focus on defence, digital, space and creative industries, and the state has genuine world-class capability in those areas, and we do want to capitalise on those. Now, there's a lot of other things we can do, and my remit is much broader than that, and it's I want to make it really clear, not just for Adelaide, it's for the whole state. But certainly at Lot 14 in particular, in concert with all the other great facilities and organisations we've got around the state, like Tonsley, we want to, on Lot 14 in particular, we want to have a real emphasis on defence, digital space and creative industries.
I must admit, I was down there the other week and it really blew me away, and I want to be part of it. I don't know how, but I want to be part of it. Mo, I want to come back to you about, you said effectively you had to leave because, you knew that it wasn't going to get off the ground. From your perspective, how important is this establishment and the formal identification of, the office of the entrepreneur or whatever it might be?
Well, I don't know if the brand itself is overly important. What's important is you have a centralised place where everyone can go that they want to build entrepreneurship. That's the most important fundamental thing that I think this state and this country has been missing. Quite frankly, my ambition is not one of benefiting the state, but benefiting the nation and benefiting the globe. Because when you're talking about cybersecurity in particular, it's a global problem. There are no borders, right? And there is a massive skills shortage right now, and we have the ability to fill that skills shortage. And I think one of the things that we're doing, which is again ambitious but very exciting because we're actually starting to make those headways, is we're not just focusing on the entrepreneur themselves. We're focusing on everything around them that needs to work. So
the whole ecosystem.
The whole ecosystem, which includes their families, which includes their friends.
Wow,
people don't understand when you're building a business how difficult it is on the families that support them, on the friends that support them, and how important they have that support structure to be successful.
So what does that look like? I've got a great idea. I've come to you guys. I've got my little posse in Lot 14. It's fabulous. How do you actively support those families where I'm not earning a quid for the next 2 years?
Well, I mean, thinking about things like, and I know Heather McKenzie's in the audience here, focusing things on things like founder mental health is really, really important because it's a challenge, right? When you don't know how you're going to pay salaries next month and how you're going to keep the lights on, that can be a pretty frightening experience, I can tell you, especially when you're not at home with your family all around you, right? So things like that, basics and fundamentals are important, but also then building that ecosystem around the business that this person's trying to build or these people are trying to build is critical, right? And my biggest issue, and every entrepreneur, almost without question, their biggest challenge is customer acquisition, right? Mm-hmm. It's getting customers. Because people always think it's all about capital raising. It's not about capital raising, because if the customers are there, even if they haven't bought anything, if they can say, we're validating this product. We want it. It's missing this and it's missing that. If you get this and that done, we will get there. A venture capitalist will speak to it, or a private equity firm or an angel investor will speak to those customer organisations and get that feedback and go, there's a space here for this, and these guys have the capability. So I'm willing to get behind. The capital will come if the customers are engaged. So shortening that life cycle to get to the customer quicker, we've never been able to do that properly in Australia, which is why I had to go to Europe to build the business, right? And then to Silicon Valley, because there they have the ability to soak in innovative technologies very quickly.
I've got to ask you, you have a hugely and wildly successful business now. What was your biggest challenge? And was there a point as an entrepreneur you went, no, I'll go back and get a PAYE job?
Well, there was actually that thought, now you mention it, never actually crossed my mind once. I don't know why.
So that means you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I guess, or it just means I'm stupid and stubborn, as my mum and my wife will attest to. But, it never really occurred to me because you're on the mission and there is no way out of the mission except to complete the mission, right? And that's kind of just the way I'm made up, I guess. But really, my biggest challenge was always the customer acquisition. So you've got to be as close to the customer as possible. And now, I think the attitude is changing here. I think the companies want to support local innovation. They realise that if we don't drive some new reliance on things other than natural resources, we're going to be screwed as an economy, right? And, we here in Adelaide and in South Australia have had a massive unemployment problem for several years. That's already changing, we with a new leader who has a new mindset of leaning in hard and getting behind the right things that are going to drive employment opportunity and future industries is that space. We've changed that.
Richard, I've got to ask you, defence always strikes me, and I'm not an expert in defence, but it strikes me as a long, slow burn, that things don't change quickly in defence. How does that marry with the world of entrepreneurship?
So I think you're being very generous there with the timelines. Interesting enough, I was speaking to somebody yesterday, and she said it was 12 years it took them to get the contract that they were awarded this week.
Oh, crap.
And that has been because everybody focuses on the large platform projects that take decades to put together. The world is fundamentally changing. The threat vectors are changing. You know, ultimately, nations these days can disrupt your economy without having to put a soldier anywhere near your country.
Absolutely.
And so defence will have to change in order to keep up with that pace. And that's what we see happening. That's what we're seeing happening out of Edinburgh, in some of the work that's done up in there. The tempo has to change. Of course, you can't change the culture of the organisation overnight.
No.
And so I think what you will see more of is new organisations sort of stepping in on the side, taking more responsibility for that and leaving some of the cultural difficulties behind. Because it's all about people. Pace is all about people.
Absolutely.
You know, people like Mo driving through the barriers. There aren't that many people in the world who are prepared to drive through barriers.
And again, this might be completely inaccurate, but defence strikes me, funnily enough, as relatively risk-averse. So how does that attitude work with entrepreneurs who are having a crack?
Well, let's talk about the space sector,
Yeah.
right? Total contrast.
Absolutely.
So what's happened in South Australia is lots of people with Mo's energy have decided, well, we're not going to carry on doing it the old way. We want to do it ourselves in a new way. And like it or not, defence will be dragged in that direction. Okay, and big government will be dragged in that direction, and it's recognised it, and it's now beginning to invest in these smaller companies. You know, it's not selling everything across at this stage, it's taking some early steps, but I believe that there will be more and more federal government investment in some of those smaller space companies, because they know that you can't rely on your big friends anymore, because the networks can be disrupted, and then you're a long, long way away from your friends.
And I'm being really rude because I can't remember the name of her company, but Flavia.
Flavia, yeah.
Yeah, with the satellites. Great story.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that she, and somebody will know the name of her company, so excuse me, Flavia. But what I found really exciting was she'd come here from Italy and landed in Adelaide almost by default, and her business has just taken off. It's extraordinary. And 2 years ago, you wouldn't have thought that was a conversation that we would be having.
But to me, that speaks about what Jim and Mo's role is to create an environment where people with that passion want to be in South Australia.
Yes.
To your point, it's not about us setting direction, picking winners or anything like that. It's about creating an environment where people with passion and energy want to be here. And if we do that, the businesses will then evolve.
I think it's extraordinary. It just feels like the whole face of South Australia and Adelaide is changing that way. You know, our mindset, we've gone from being, and Adelaide, God love us all, can be a bit risk averse and a bit loath to go outside of the parameters.
Well, that's Australia, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
well, you're probably right.
It is
Australia.
Australia, and I mean, if you look at South Australia, and we, you know, our guests from Silicon Valley who have been here. In fact, could I just ask you guys to please stand up for a second, because I'd like at some stage people to go and say hello. But the inbound mission, please.
So they were the ones singing the anthem properly.
Although we've got a Portuguese and an Austrian here, so I don't know where they are on the.
They're Silicon Valley boys too.
Well, welcome. Welcome, chaps.
So
welcome to Adelaide.
But I think if any of you go and have a talk to table 17 and 18 and talk to those guys, they will tell you how lucky we are with our lifestyle, with what we've got. We've had the last couple of days with them. We've been met with many of them in Silicon Valley a couple of weeks ago on the Premier's mission over there. But, you know, we have got the basis for a great lifestyle. We're consistently in the top 10 places to live in the world. So, you know, why not come here? We've got great universities. We've got smart people. We can do great things. And it's an attitudinal change.
Yeah.
You know, as someone has told me on several occasions, you know, the worst critics of South Australia
South
are
Australia.
those, well, those
The ones who have never left.
those that have never been and those that have never left.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a Melbourne boy originally. We are living in the best small city in the world. And we've got every opportunity here. And if we can change that environment, that social environment, it is about, it's about the whole ecosystem. It's about friends of yours. You may not be an entrepreneur, but you might have a friend of his. When he or she succeeds, tap them on the back and say, great job. And when they don't do so well, help them out, give them a bit of encouragement and support. And, I know I had that when I started my own business. My wife, Melinda O'Leary, is sitting over there. And, I know if it weren't for my charm and good looks, she would have divorced me 15 times over.
So it was Valentine's Day yesterday, right? Yeah. Jim, I've got to ask you, and because our American friends are indeed inherently young and hip and fabulous, but I think the problem is most of us think, or many of us think of entrepreneurs as somebody who's 18 to 21, drinking unpronounceable coffees and chai lattes and whatever. But the reality is that's not what entrepreneurs are. Tell us about, there was a study that found a significant number were, dare I say it, over 50.
Oh, sorry, why are you looking at me when you...
I'm not.
I think you're right. I think that there was a Harvard or a Columbia business school case study that literally came up with the average age of an entrepreneur, I think between 52 and 54. So yes, it is. It's broad, and the remit for our office, for Mo and I, is literally everyone from a kid in primary school or high school to someone that's retired and says, what, I've now finished my work life and I've got some great ideas. I want to do something with that, and the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur is to support them. We want to get number one, we want to support kids in schools, but we want to change the attitude.
That mindset is extraordinary.
And we've got to do it at the schools. And I know people like Noel Lindsay, who just spoke before. He has been very, very active through ECIC at the University of Adelaide in promoting schools and entrepreneurship. He's got a pilot program with the state government for rolling out to 28 schools. And hopefully, if that works, we're going to roll it out even further. Want kids to be thinking about this, want them to be supporting their friends that are doing it, and just having a positive view. And I think, just quickly, I know you want to go on, but there has been a negative connotation associated with entrepreneurship. The Allen Bonds.
Well, people think of them as wankers.
Yeah.
Well,
some
not always.
of them are.
Yeah.
Why are you staring at me again?
But I just wonder whether it's one of those. It's just sometimes. Sorry, I do apologise. Whether it's an unfortunate word, but aren't we talking about ideas and action?
Why are the Americans laughing so hard?
But don't you think, entrepreneurship is not necessarily part of our daily lexicon.
Yeah.
So isn't it just about having a great idea and the guts to have a go?
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's also about having a real environment around you that can facilitate that.
Yeah.
Because there are situations where it's just not realistic, right? And so I feel pretty strongly about if I feel that someone's in a position where that what they perceive as realistic is just the chance of it is so slim. I've nearly been bankrupt several times trying to build this business, and who knows, maybe we'll be again, right? But you've got to be realistic about where you're at and make the right decision to change direction or understand how to change direction and have that supporting infrastructure around you. And the kind of change in mindset that Jim's talking about, it starts in this room. Look how many of the people in this room are influential people, right? That have an amazing network. And I'm not just talking about other people in your business life. I'm talking about your kids, I'm talking about your parents, I'm talking about your cousins, your aunties, your uncles. We need to engage them all in this discussion. We need them to be behind us. It needs to reach out and touch the people on the street, right? And once we do that, then the whole state is behind us. And this isn't just about building great South Australian companies. It's about building great Australian companies that we can launch from Adelaide. We are going to be the capital of Australia for the future industries. It is happening. So it's just a matter of when. And there's only so much that we can do, but there's a hell of a lot more that you all can do.
And after you've done cybersecurity, can you do politics? You'd be fabulous. Richard, asking you, do you think that there are enough people, given the way defence is moving, and it's slightly to the side of an entrepreneurship, I suppose, But do we have enough people with the skills? And I really worry about the fact that we're driving an industry. Have we got enough people with the right skills to support it? And is that why it makes this drive to support entrepreneurship all the more important?
Well, it's actually very circular here.
Yeah.
So in order for us to create the skills that we're going to need in 10 to 15 years, which nobody can tell you what they're going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look back 10 years, could you have predicted what skills people need today? No. So it's not about creating, detailed plans of the people we need in 15 years' time. What we've got to do is get more kids in schools with those fundamental interests in technology.
And curiosity.
And this is where space and this is where entrepreneurship is so important. And then that will then build a pipeline that then can go into these industries in the future. The other thing we can do, and as you know, this government's looking at that, is to actually bring people home and fill up today what we need. Because if I look at the defence sector, the problem's not in the shipyard, right? There's enough time, there's enough programs in place to generate that workforce, which will hit a peak in the middle of the next decade. There's time to do that. The problem is in the next few years when we can create opportunities for South Australian, Australian companies to be part of the supply chain, we need people transferring technology back. And that requires us to bring people in to help build those local businesses up.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you're right, and it's the first time it's sort of bitten me, I suppose. I have 4 children, 2 currently at school in Victoria and 2 currently at school, and my 17-year-old has basically said to me he's probably not going to come back to Adelaide. And it breaks my heart, and that's why, for me...
Doesn't break mine when my son said that.
Yeah, well... for me, I think we really need to get this message out that there is a future for Adelaide.
But Lee, I think that's changing, and things like the Space Agency, recent announcement of the Space Agency being here. I was in the US a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to this guy, Enrico, who is the president, and this is about the coolest job title in the entire world. He is president of the Spaceship Company.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'd put that on my business card.
And the Spaceship Company makes the spaceships for the space vehicles for Virgin Galactic, for all the space tourism and stuff like that. He was actually a West Australian mechanical engineer, wanted to get into space, nothing happening in Australia, went to London, has ended up in the US doing great things. And we were talking about the fact he wants to come home, and he said, "Is it time for me to come home yet?"
But is there a job for me?
Yeah, well, absolutely, no, absolutely, and I'm saying, yeah, there will be.
Yeah,
it's happening right now, and we've got other people. You mentioned Flavia before. We've got Alex Grant from Mariota, again, great success story in space. Matt Tetlow from Innovorus, I think somewhere in the audience. There is some really, really exciting stuff going on, and I know when I'm talking to kids in schools, which I'm doing a fair bit of at the moment. I'm saying, hey, you know what? There are some great opportunities. I think it's also important and some exciting careers ahead. But I think it's also important, I don't have a view that we need to stop all our youth going away. I think we need to get the balance right. We need to keep a lot here and doing all sorts of things. But I want a lot of them to go interstate, go overseas, get some great skills and do some fabulous things, and then come home and make South Australia great again.
You don't get a job in politics. Jim, I've got to ask you.
He hasn't talked about his plan to build a wall yet.
Well, the way he leapt over that one, he doesn't need to. Jim, what's the entrepreneur visa? What is that?
So we've got a pilot program, which obviously is a federal government program, but has been very much architected and driven by South Australia. Basically, we have a visa scheme for entrepreneurs from all over the world who can migrate to South Australia specifically under an entrepreneurship visa scheme. The only state you'll be able to do it in, it's been piloted here. And what we are saying, and one of the reasons we've got all the Americans and other foreigners here is say, go back home and tell your families you're coming back and we'll let you live here. Or tell your friends that you can come and live here. And I think that, in concert with a whole lot of other things, we've just announced $28 million startup commercialisation grant. We have the South Australian Venture Capital Fund, which has got $50 million with it, and they are one of the investors in Mariota. And again, Mariota, Great example. The only company outside North America that Boeing Ventures, the venture capital arm of the Boeing company, have invested in anywhere in the world. Like, you know, we have got great stuff. The environment is here right now. Seize it.
I was going to say, you very kindly hosted me the other week, and I went down and had a look at Lot 14. I tell you what, guys, if you haven't been down there, you have to go and have a look. Mo and Jim, can I ask you to give me the sales pitch? Lot 14, most of us would call it the old RAH. It is amazing what they're doing.
Sure.
Give us an insight.
So Lot 14, as I say, old RAH site, it is 7 hectares of prime real estate. Like, you know, you can walk down there in 10 minutes from here, right in the middle of the city. It will arguably be the largest entrepreneurial precinct and neighbourhood in the Southern Hemisphere. You know, we've got a startup hub. There's going to be $500 million spent on development of the whole facility. We've got a hub that will be activating in sort of May, April. That will have seats for 650 entrepreneurs. I mean, it's just going to be the centre of entrepreneurship, not only in South Australia, but the centre of entrepreneurship in Australia.
Jim, the other one, and keep going, but the other thing I like is it's not a closed shop.
Totally open. So one of the things, the place has been designed to cause collisions for people to walk and talk and mingle with each other, and also for Adelaide and the public to walk through. So when it's all finished, there'll be paths from the Botanic Gardens to Frome Road to North Terrace. We want all of you walking in and having a look around, seeing the great things that are happening. You know, for the building that's going to be devoted to space, there will be a control room on the bottom floor, glass. Kids will be able to walk past and see satellites being built.
It is so cool.
Control stations. It's like going to be a scene out of a James Bond movie.
Geez, Jim, you sold that really well.
Yeah.
Really well.
So what about you, Mo? What do you
well,
think?
I'd just like to add, right, I'd just like to put a little bit of inside context to what Jim's saying, because, and you'll like this analogy, Jim, we are flying the plane as we're building it, right? And that is a hard thing to do. And that's the reason why is because the Premier of our state is very impatient, and Jim is very impatient. And it's really hard work, because we're not just going to transform it into a bit of real estate where tech companies come and hang out. That's not the game plan here. We've gone and visited the world's best tech parks, and we've seen what works and what doesn't work, and we're bringing that thinking back here. And what it means is we need to build on that site a full-on ecosystem around these entrepreneurs, so that they have everything they need there, like the customers, the investors. And when we talk about investors, it's not just VC, right? It's angel investors that can help in that early stage seed funding. It's VCs that can help in Series A, B, and C funding. It's private equity that can help them scale globally. Like, it's putting that whole thing together, right? And teach them how to pitch. And it's also about the services organisations, like the lawyers and the accountants, that they need to have that provision and that ability to take the painful stuff away that actually doesn't move the needle forward. Yeah. Let that be taken care of, so they can actually focus on core business and driving that forward.
Richard, what do you think of this as a concept?
Well,
Please don't say you think it's stupid.
Now, it's not a good time to disagree, but, you know.
you're tempting me. But this is the differentiator. It's not a bricks and mortar play.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got fantastic bricks and mortar there, and we'll have even better ones once the development happens, but that's not what it's about at all. It's about putting people who are suffering the same pain next to each other so they can help each other out. It's, you know, having an entrepreneur walk in to see me isn't very helpful for an entrepreneur, probably. Don't know what you
no, that's not true. Not at all true.
We like you, Richard. We like
but seriously, I mean, they want to talk to people who've had the same lived experience,
absolutely.
who can get that real support, both to them in that area. So this is about creating that community of startup. It's about bringing some of the market to them as well. Because, you know, it's no good us just sitting around inventing some technology if we're not bringing a market in there.
Yeah.
So, you know, I imagine the startup hub will actually be engaging a lot with potential customers and bringing them through all the time so they can be immersed in the development of this system.
Can I just double click on that for a minute?
Click ahead.
The reality is the gentlemen, and unfortunately they're only gentlemen this trip, but next trip we'll be bringing some women too. And we need diversity, folks. It's a mission, right? But unfortunately, in the tech industry, like writ large, right across the globe, it's very heavily male-dominated, right? We need to change that, and we're working to try and change that.
I can't believe more women don't want to be computer geeks like you, mate.
Do I look like a geek to you? You're the one wearing the glasses.
Yeah, later.
So,
I'm seeing Ron Casey all over again.
but we don't want to be on the news that quickly, Jim. So what I wanted to say is, ask the question, why are these guys here from Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
Are they here for a jolly because we paid for their flights and accommodation to come here? No, they are on their own dime coming here.
Wow.
Why are they on their own dime coming here? And by the way, Jim's a volunteer. He didn't have much to do before anyway. He's volunteering literally probably 6 days worth of his time a week to this role. So let's put our hands together for Jim.
But there's a real passion.
There's a passion for it. And these guys are here for two specific reasons. I won't put words in their mouth, but we've been talking heavily about this. They're here because of the talent, number one, right? They know that they can get the talent here that they desperately need at the right price point.
Well, don't poach too many.
It's not a problem if we're hiring them and giving them an opportunity based here at Lot 14, working for Silicon Valley companies.
Yeah, true.
And going in and out of the Bay Area or wherever in the world and getting that experience and bringing it back here. But they're also here because there's amazing companies that are being built here that they can invest in, get behind, soak into the ecosystem globally, right? This is self-selection, right? So I just wanted to add that because that's an illustration of what Richard is saying.
It seems to me, and the one thing that I think we need to marry with entrepreneurship is equals tangible outcomes. That it's not all pie in the sky, and I think that's where part of the communication may have been lost. That it's not about, gee, I've got a great idea and I'm going to sit somewhere hip and drink coffee and it'll come to nothing. So I think it's about driving the message that this is being supported because there will be, and there have been, really fabulous tangible outcomes for South Australia. Anyway, I digress.
Well, you've obviously recognised me as a man of great fluff.
There are many things, Jim. Many things. So, I don't know where to go with that. Okay, Jim, so tell me, what is the FIXA, otherwise known as the Future Industries Exchange for Entrepreneurship?
So that is the whole strategy for entrepreneurship. And I was expecting you to say, can you spell entrepreneurship? Can you ask me what FIXA stands for?
Oh, good.
I've learned it. But no, that's the whole strategy behind it. And you know, Lot 14, what's going on in places like Tonsley, what's happening all over the state. Fix is part of that broader strategy that we're putting together and engaging at the moment. And that strategy I talked about of inspire, equip, enable and celebrate, that is all the fundamental part of Fix. And believe me, it is very, very outcome focused. Again, I've got the Chief Operating Officer in the audience, Dr. Andy Dunbar. Andy is working flat out right now. And
stand up, Andy. Stand up.
Where are you, Andy? Working flat out with the Entrepreneurship Advisory Board, with DIS, with a whole lot of people to, number one, help us put that strategy together, and also, more importantly, to put some measures behind it. Because, you know, I'm not the warm, fluffy type. I'm a test pilot. I like numbers, and I want to see that we've had an outcome.
Yep.
And in all honesty, if in 3 or 4 years' time this whole thing gets closed down, then all of us who are working on this will have failed. I mean that seriously, and that is one of the things that's driving me forward. I don't want to be the inaugural chief entrepreneur.
And the last one.
That screwed it up. Yeah, seriously, that screwed it up. And whoever succeeds me, I know will be a far better chief entrepreneur than me, and I hope because we have set the groundwork for them to do even greater things.
Well, I can guarantee it's going to be too big to shut down, Jim. I'll put that guarantee out there right now.
Well done. Well, it does feel, you know, and Mo and I were talking before, it just feels like there's a tipping point, and for me it's a bit like the Adelaide Oval.
Yep.
No. Oh, God, everybody loves it. It's fabulous. And it has that same sort of feel of momentum that we'll get to some point, and it becomes too big to ignore and even too big to be cynical about. A couple of other things. The Research, Commercialisation and Startup Fund, what's that all about?
That's the $28 million I'd spoken about before. So, you know, if you've got a business and you want some free cash, come and see us.
Oh, pick me. Yeah. The South Australian Venture Capital Fund.
South Australian Venture Capital Fund, again, is that $50 million I talked about before. So it's a co-invest type thing. I mentioned Mariota. So again, that venture capital fund is for companies that are at a more developed stage. They've got some customers. Now they really, really want to scale. And so that money's available for that. So again, there's money there.
Space Innovation Fund. There's lots of funds, apparently.
Yeah, this one predates the creation of Lot 14, and that's designed to start up and incubate space companies within the state and equip those people with the skills they need to build a business.
I often wonder whether there are transferable skills between industries.
Oh, yeah.
That we tend to see industries in silos, so whether it's, space or manufacturing, and sometimes we fail to recognise the transferability. No?
So I'll pick that one up. So if you look at the key verticals that no one can argue with us that Adelaide is super strong in, right? So there's the defence one, everyone gets that. There's the space one now, everyone's really excited about that. There's the creative industries as well. We're very strong in film and television. We were out in the US Sundance Film Festival. We had 3 South Australian films at Sundance. Do you know how big that is?
It's huge.
It's huge, right? And we've got a whole ecosystem built around film and television in South Australia, which is super strong. So if you take just those 3 verticals that no one can argue in the world that we're super strong at, then you think about the horizontal industries that go across that, right? So then there's artificial intelligence and machine learning. We have announced that we'll have the Australian Institute for Machine Learning here on the Lot 14 site, and we're really proud of that because we've got coming out of all 3 of our universities some of the most world-class leaders in AI and machine learning, and that is required for defence, the future of defence. It's required for the future of space. It's required for the future of creative industries. And then my favourite and my most demanding one is cybersecurity, right? You don't have any business today in any industry that doesn't have cyber protection. And if you do, you're going to be dead.
Yeah.
No, that's for sure. You are going to be breached, and you're going to be breached soon. So what are you doing about it, right? And so we need to now put that stamp all over everything that we're doing here in South Australia as well, and that's one of my missions for this year.
I'm going to run out of time, as always. A final question. I'm a fabulous entrepreneur. Well, I'd like to be an entrepreneur with a great idea. A question for all. Where do I start? What's the first door you knock on?
So the first door is down at the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur. There's websites, there are contact details, easily found. Just look up Office of Chief Entrepreneur, South Australia. South Australian Office of the Chief Entrepreneur. And that will give you a portal. You will get on lists. You will start to be invited to events. We are facilitating interactions, meeting the people you need to meet, the people that will inspire you, the people that will support you.
I have to say, the closing note, it sounds like they are genuinely exciting times.
Oh, great.
Very much so.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank our speakers?
Thank you, Lee.